this panel will talk really about this extreme agility, right? And this is what today's world is. How do you balance rapid innovation with sustainable growth? We have a little bit different format, so three of us are panelists. I'll also moderate as well as I'll be also kind of provide some input as a panelist. So I'm Vagesh Dave. I'm a CIO for McDermott. McDermott is a large oil and gas energy infrastructure company. We do everything from, HVDCs that collect electricity from wind farms to oil platforms to LNG. We are spread across 50 plus countries. And I'll let my panelists introduce themselves. Rohan?
Pleasure to be here. Thank you to MIT for having us and the Sloan Business School. My name is Rohan Roger. I'm the CTO at Synoptek. We're a global technology services provider and solutions integrator. I've been in this space for 15 years, so way longer than I look. I actually started my first startup when I was still in school, focused on using technology to solve educational disparity in India, and the rest is history. So pleasure to be with all of you here today.
Hello, Ranbir Chawla. I am the SVP of Engineering for Ritchie Brothers, or RB Global. We're the world's largest auction house for heavy equipment, construction, agricultural, and also whole car and salvage car. And I am as old as I look. So there you go.
Thank you. So how many of you guys moved into a new house, right? What happened first 6 months you moved in? You're fixing the old stuff. Your wife still wants innovation done. And you're kind of really doing stabilization and settling the house as well as getting the last few things done. But 6 to 8 months will be over. What if it's never over? Right? What if it continues on? And that's really the life of an IT practitioner today, where your business wants everything right away, and you have to figure out what's the right mix of doing innovation at the same time keeping the system stable and making sure there's new cybersecurity stuff. So question for my panelists, what percentage of you think there's time, energy, money you guys spend in your organization on innovation versus keeping the growth sustainable and maintain the stability and scalability of the systems?
You want to go?
Sure. I mean, for us, it's really 50-50 just because of the space we're in. We really have to innovate as quickly as we can, as well as try to get rid of the tech that we have, that a lot of our customers have, is what is the anchor that we need to sort of try to jettison. So for it's really trying to balance both. And honestly, most days it feels like 100-100. It doesn't feel like 50-50. So yeah, that's where we're at.
I think for our company, it's a tough thing to figure out where innovation is based on where we are in our life cycle, right? We have a lot of legacy. We're grown through integration, so we have all the spaghetti mess to fix. And there's a digital word I'm not going to use that we're doing. So it's where do you find the innovation? But I think for us, a lot of the innovation right now is around how to solve the problem of our competitive advantage is our white glove service. We take better care of our sellers and our buyers than anybody in our industry. And a lot of that is done through people, right? We have a high tendency towards carbon versus silicon in every part of our organization, right? So innovation for us is convincing people that change management, as Anif said, it's always the people, right? So it's how do I take the people on a journey that I can innovate an automated way to offer that same level of service, right? How do we create a digital version of the people that are on the ground right now doing the work, right? And make that scale to allow allow those people. It's really not about eliminating people, it's allowing them to even reach a higher level, right, of service. But a lot of the things we do are rather mundane, and I think we're so used to it being that way that it looks very scary to people to automate. So for us, first couple of years of this, the innovation is just proving that computers can do invoices successfully, and that the math will work out, it'll be okay. Right? And now we've moved on to some higher level innovation. We can talk about that. But a lot of it for us is just trying to find a way to take white glove human contact and customer service and make it work digitally for our customers.
Okay, great. Look, for us, so McDermott just celebrated 100 years last year, and we've grown through acquisition. So the amount of technical debt is there. So we are about 60-40. I like to be 50-50, but the reality is, you got to take up advantage of opportunities to look at your modernization opportunities and kind of mix it with innovation. Now, some of you guys noticed an empty chair here. We decided to have an empty chair for the customer, the spirit of Amazon. But Next question for you guys is, what does agility mean for you and your customers, right? Talk about where's your culture in terms of agile mindset, innovation mindset, and maybe give an example if you guys have one.
Sure, I'll take that. I think when we started, agility meant a lot of things to different teams, many teams across the organization. Some of it was scaled agile, some of it was we'll do Scrum. None of it was actually focused on delivery of business value to the customer, though, right? And so we went back to the beginning and said, we're here as creatives, right, to solve problems and generate value for the business. And so we ruthlessly focused on how to eliminate all the steps between an ideation or an input from a customer to an actual output, right? And I talk about a lot when we do development. It's a game of telephone, right? What we do is a game of telephone. Customer tells a product person tells a tech lead tells a dev. Then we work our way back out the stack, right? What are the chances that that's correct 100% all the time, right? So every release is somehow inherently flawed, as I like to say. So to us, agile means getting to an idea or a smallest unit of proof to the customer that we heard what they said. Right, so you sat in the chair, you said you wanted this. How do I show you even a skeleton of that idea to prove to you that I heard you? And if I didn't hear you, and if I've only burned 3 days of effort, right, and I need to move the button here to here, or this isn't what I meant, et cetera, it's not going to take me 3 days to fix it. Our old culture was to go away for 5, 6, 7 months, disappear into a cave and come back with 6 or 7 months. Of course, a lot of it was then wrong, right? So then it was 6 more months in the cave, but only half productive. So you generate tech debt along the way. So to us, agile really means getting to that, getting to a proof point as quickly as possible, and then building those layers on top of it, right? The analogy that we're using now, and it wasn't mine, it was one of my Ritchie Brothers leaders. One day, a guy named Jazz, I'm going to give him credit if he sees the recording. Jazz says to me, "So it's 3D printing code." I'm like, "What do you mean?" He goes, "This isn't going to look like the thing, but if I just put a little bit every day, I get to the thing." I thought that was brilliant. So to us, that's what agile means, right? And if we can get to the point of eliminating a lot of the waste in our value stream, eliminating anything that's blocking us, we can afford to take some risk on innovation because we're delivering so well on the rest of it. We can put some waste back in. We can try ideas that might not work, right? And we're less worried now about things having to be perfect every time. And we've got customers willing to give feedback. So that's kind of what it means to me.
Okay, great. Rohan?
It's interesting, right? Because when the pandemic started, everyone was sort of caught a little bit with their pants down. We had to help ourselves and our customers that weren't, already there, move to the cloud, get their bases in order, get to a point where they could actually move forward and be resilient in the basic ways. So it sort of increased everyone's appetite for agility or adaptability, like we like to see it. And so we even saw some of the oldest institutions in the world that really, their hallmark, their ethos is their rigidity, their old values. They became more malleable, and we were really at the center of all of that. So, just to use an example, at our own company, we realized that we had inculcated this culture of agility and adaptability, and we sort of try to harness that every day. And AI is a great example, right? Because we just find ourselves again in this spot where there's rapid innovation happening. So for instance, at our firm, what we did was we got all our business leaders together, and we sort of understood what would be, if we were to take 2024 as the year of, learning fast and failing fast, what would that look like? And so we brought together 5 to 7 POCs. It doesn't have to be a large number, just 5 to 7 proof of concepts that we wanted to do. And to do that, we got together a small tiger team, again, 10 people interdisciplinary, and we gave them the charge. We said, go ahead, let's operate in 2-week sprints. Go ahead, try something, come back to us, tell us if it works and it doesn't work, and then we calibrate accordingly. And that's been very interesting for us. And we have our company roadmap, and we have those POCs working, and we see those moving forward. So that's great. The second thing that was a little more, I think was pretty innovative was, we understood that we've got 1,500 really smart people working with us. They're all in the technology space. So we're just a pack of nerds, right? And in order to help everyone really feel that they're a part of it, and in order to make sure that we are learning from the people that are doing the work, we actually created a framework at our company where we allow people to, or we're in the process of setting this up, where we're going to allow people to request access to a specific AI tool states their use case, and once they get the manager's approval for utilization and things like that, we'll give them access and you run them through a short curriculum. And what that allows us to do is it keeps everyone engaged, but then it also helps us prevent going deeper down the hole of shadow IT. Because ChatGPT is out there, it's $20 a person, and it helps people do their jobs easier. That's just something that we all recognize. And we want to make sure that we can innovate and protect our IP at the same time as we help people develop and allow them to really be part of the process and make sure that they're excited to come to work. So it's really a cultural thing for us, and that's what we're sort of trying to view this entire year as. I'm excited.
Thank you. Look, I think in general there's this exponential, I would say, increase in velocity of technology and business change driven by technology. A lot of our users have iPhones or they have products and they get updates every month or every quarter. So agility is now table stakes. Where I think there's often a cultural aspect where the last mile of adoption doesn't always happen. Right? As human beings, there's only so much change you can absorb. So as IT practitioners, you gotta look at that and say, okay, there's agility, there's expectation for agility, but is our culture ready? Does culture have that agile mindset? Are they looking to adopt new technologies? And then what else goes with it? So imagine you have an island of wood choppers, and they all use X, and one day you introduce chainsaw. Just by giving that new tool doesn't really help them. You gotta work around the processes, how they work, what are some of the new challenges, is there training? There's a whole ecosystem around that, right? And same goes with technology and innovation mindset. So next question for this group is, just in the same time, how have you overcome and helped your organization kind of struggle, right, with keeping up with the changing cyber landscape, at the same time kind of need for investing in AI, automation, and some of the newer innovations?
Sure. I can take that to start off of. So we all know we sort of live in a volatile world, right? There's geopolitical instability, there's regional conflict, leads to supply chain disruption, leads to a bunch of other things. There's economic, the economy to a lot of people doesn't completely make sense. We have all these matrices and indicators that should say, that there's a downturn coming. If it's not here yet, it keeps getting forecasted over and over. So, there's that hesitation to sort of, to invest and to do a lot. So, at the same time, there's a duality there because we go into a lot of companies and we see people doing, 40 to 50 different things in different departments. And so when it comes to balancing moving forward with agility and then making sure that we're being secure, we sort of, like to do a short exercise where we ask, everything, all the processes to get a little mapped out and everything to be out there because really a lot of times less is more. And so when you go into a business and you map out all the processes, you understand where everything lives, and it helps you sort of prepare if you were to have an unexpected outcome. And then all of that has to be done with the mindset of a risk and compliance framework. And so the way I like to guide folks through that is to think of a Venn diagram with 3 concentric circles, one inside the other. The circle really at the heart of it is the humans. It's your people. So it's so important to invest in them. From the most basic things to security awareness training to just making sure you do phishing simulations like your bare minimums, to also creating an AI curriculum, which at Synoptek we're trying to do as well. And one of our foci are prompt engineering and the different tools out there and the education. But another piece of that is compliance, ethics. Like, should you do that? Is that really is that the right thing to do? How can you do it in a way that it protects our IP, it protects you? You're putting it into the right tools and things like that. So really, humans are the first layer. The second layer is really your data. So think about where your data lives. Again, going back to the process exercise, and thinking about really challenge your business leaders to try to understand what would they do if they lost that data. How long could they go, without having access to the data? Like, what is the recovery time objective? What's the recovery point objective? And those are sort of the things we try to lead everyone through to sort of, think about those things. And then the last circle really is the infrastructure that houses the data, and that's really the thing that we saw come to light a lot the last 4 or 5 years, are you resilient? Are you able to be in the cloud, and are you there? Do you have the right security controls in place? Do you have a government, a governance, risk, and compliance framework in place? Do you have a SIM and SOC? Just basic things, right? And if you really think through all of these things for every initiative that you're doing at your company, and you have everything mapped out, it makes the conversations easier. We've seen at least that you're able to dive deeper and take more risks on, because you know you have those fallbacks and those mitigation plans in place, and you have all of those things laid out. So that's how we really like to guide.
Oh, that's great. Ranbir?
Yeah, I think, I think I'm going to say there's kind of 3 foundational elements. I think the first one is partnership and getting to yes. And so I think one of the things that we've been really successful with at Ritchie is I have an amazing CISO. I can't talk about how amazing my CISO is. A lot of CISOs are mentally constructed to say no, right? No risk, no risk, no risk. And he was willing to take a journey into moving into a more cloud-native environment. And we started off by discussing, like, what are the outcomes he's trying to achieve, and understand the outcomes he's trying to achieve, and prove to him that we could cover those outcomes in the cloud, but also more important, we could codify a lot of compliance for him, right? Move from manual inspection to automated. And so the second piece of this is try to make it easy for people to do the right thing. People will do the right thing, right? But people are also slightly, and I'm lazy too, right? We're all slightly lazy. I'd rather go fishing than do this, right? Some days. So if I have to do a lot of work to get to be more secure, right, something's going to fall through the cracks. So how do we make it really easy for people to do the right thing? So paving as many roads as possible, making security a sensible default in all the things we do. And in our environment, we've built at Ritchie, a very cloud-native environment, a lot of compliance at the edge. We think a lot about this. We talk about this. It's a forefront concept to us, right? From a junior dev all the way up to the top, we understand what we own as an asset is our data, what we own is our trust with our customers, all those things. I think the third part of it is just, is really just staying ahead of it, right? Just being bold and saying, look, there are people out there to attack us. You can let that get to you, right? Or you can just be too cool for school and just not let them bother you. Just keep doing your thing, right? And if you let, I don't know. To me, hackers are like horses. If they see you're afraid, they're just going to congregate and they're going to go after you, right? So just think about how you, integrate that into your culture and your behavior, right? It helps things be a little bit smoother along those lines. I'm really fascinated, by the way, with the comment that came out earlier from one of the previous panelists. I've really got to go sit on top of the mountain and drop some Colorado edibles and think about the concept of infra is now going to be part of security. That was a great comment today, and as a 14-year cloud practitioner, that one was an interesting aha moment today, right? Is that where infra really belongs? And maybe it is, because that's your number one challenge in that space. So I think how everything, and maybe the real meta point of that is that security is not one team's problem, right? It is how everything that we do has to be secure. To your point, the people who are governing data, the people who are responsible for creating it and then doing something, whether they're both equally responsible for where that process ends up. Because you can publish data, right, to a completely insecure part of the universe. So you're part of the issue. And then governing who has access to data, because of course in a public company or even in a private company, not everyone should have access, right? So that governance is everybody's problem. And so I think creating that culture where it's one team all in around securing the company's assets and talking out loud about what the company's assets are is really key. You can't hide security. You can't pretend it's not there. You can't pretend it's an impolite conversation. You kind of have to just put it out front.
Okay, no, that's great. Mm-hmm. And so without repeating some of the things the gentleman said, I kind of leave you with 2 things. I think being bold is really important. And nowadays, with the low-code, no-code tools available, you got to democratize IT. And that's one thing we have seen benefits of putting Power Apps and Power BIs in hands of the users. Let them basically go at it. They understand the domain, and they have the expertise around it. In addition to that, what we have done is we kind of moved this from proof of concept to proof of value. Proof of concept doesn't do anything. I think you got to look at, does it generate value? And we actually have a structure where we work with business partners and really allow them in a very agile way to create products and just try them out. We do what we call design workshops. And we just did one in our engineering center in India. We call in engineers and really ask them, okay, if you had to do this, how would you do it? Give them sticky notes. And we have digital innovation center staffed by product developers. They're not your typical IT folks, but they actually know how to develop products, and they actually work with the users to come up with small, clever things, right, that creates 1 or 2% productivity. But that goes a long way when you do it in a repeatable manner, right? And finally, what has changed for us is now everything we do with the cyber threat landscape in mind. So now we use a different lens to look at it and say, okay, can there be a breach here? Before, we used to develop solutions where they are open, they are flexible, right? More collaboration. Now we just put an extra lens on it to say, okay, how can this be breached? What can bad actors do? And that's a big change for us. Now, I'll pause for a minute and say any questions from the audience. And this guy's ready for tough questions, so.
Guess not.
Okay. All right. So look, I think the CIOs, the IT practitioners here, what's one advice would you give them, right, around how would you balance innovation versus the need for agility and need to just kind of keep your system stable, scalable, right? In other words, somebody's screaming for brand new tiles and carpet, but you got to fix the leaking roof, right? Or make sure the foundation is there.
I think I would answer.
And if you can give an example of how you've been successful in the organization.
Sure. I think, well, first of all, I think understanding who you're innovating for, right? It's the customer, right? So the customer is could be internal, could be external, right? Could be both. But you shouldn't be innovating solely for yourself, right? Now, we're, hopefully building creative, right, wonderful experiences for our clients. Whether, look, an API can still be an elegant experience, right? It can be an excellent API to use. And if anyone's used a bad API, right, they know they've used a bad API, right? And sometimes some of us have gotten to use the Ferrari of APIs, and we know we got to use the Ferrari of APIs. So I'm not just talking about UIs, but think about, how do you do your best work, right? And innovate to find a way to get that best work. I think that's it. The second thing I always say is, and as a selection criterion for any design, I want to find out the other 3 or 4 hidden ROIs. I want to know the layers in your plan, right? It's not good to bring me an idea and this will fix this problem. Yeah, but what are the other 3 things I get out of it? If this is successful, what else do I get, right? So I'll give you an example. We started working with a company that builds AI around knowledge graphs on top of a very popular set of scalable cloud compute systems, right? Now, we have scale issues for our data. So I can use a really scalable cloud database that eliminates tying storage to compute, and I get a lot of flexibility there, and then I can use knowledge graphs to manage some complex concepts for us. I can do all those things. But it also turns out to be an excellent feature store for some of the ML, because ML is still cool, right? We can still do ML. And there's other things that we can do with it. So again, we're going to implement that, right? But we're 3/4 of the way to the future stuff because we did this thing, right? And so part of our way of choosing what to invest in is, does this have a possibility of having a higher ROI? Is there some other hidden benefits nobody's looking at, right? Taking a little bit of that time to not just do the first knee-jerk reaction, but think what else can I do here? And then I'll say this, right? Not all innovation is sexy, but some of it's just basic, right? We list stuff online to sell, right? That's what we do. People, they sell a piece of heavy equipment, whether it's $1 million crane or a $50,000 tractor. Somebody inspects that piece of equipment, and they put notes in and out. And it turns out all of those notes sound different, look different. Sometimes they're not even complete sentences. Sometimes they're not capitalized well. And we have a team of 50, 60 people that go through and clean those up. And we just went to our cloud provider and said, okay, I don't want to do anything really fancy for Gen AI, but can I get a Grammarly version for my inspector notes? So my listings, the one guy in marketing who's really good at writing copy, have it all sound like Curtis, right? Just make all of the listings sound like this, right? And our cloud, we could do that. I said, but if you did it for us, you could sell it to 100 other e-commerce companies. Oh, yeah, we could do that. Convince them, right? So part of our way of getting innovation with the small team that we have is going out and finding other companies to do some of the work for us. So I always recommend that to people. If you have good partners, whether they're consulting partners, whether they're cloud providers, right? where can you find an edge? Where can you convince them that your problem is monetizable for them? Is an interesting way to get a little bit of ROI for yourself.
Yeah, that's great.
I have a quick question. So, may I ask?
Yeah, go ahead, please. Do you have a mic here?
No, it's okay.
Okay, all right.
Can carry. So, how much of this of your time in terms of AI and Gen AI do you spend on internal engineering productivity versus improving products?
Well, if you're asking me, we're just at the cusp of getting really good at creative output in terms of productivity, right? Our environment was so bad from ideation to shipping that Gen AI was just going to give up. Like a Gen AI would look at our value stream 2 years ago and be like, I'm out. I shut down, container, done. I'm out. The silicon would have given up sooner than the carbon. So we really worked on that before we get there, right? And I think we're just at the point of thinking about it now, to be honest, for us, right? Because
Yours is all internal facing so far. Is that what I'm saying?
No. But what I'm saying is that there is no point in using Gen AI for productivity tools right now when the environment that it would have to work in was non-productive, right? If it created code and it still took 4 months to ship the code, why would I worry about that first, right? That's just where we are, right? I'm just going to say this out loud on a stage, right? People who know me probably know this is coming, right? To me, this is my opinion, but I'm going to stand by this one. Right now, Gen AI reaches the lowest common denominator. Whether it's art, photography, automotive design, poetry, online e-commerce listings, it's all the common denominator of the worst of everything because most of the stuff in the middle of the bell curve is not what you want, but that's what we train on, right? Why would I want that code in my building? Why would I want the lowest common denominator for that? So for us, right, we're starting to experiment with Gen AI to do the toil, okay? So for us and for a lot of developers I've grown up with, show of hands for who loved, as a developer, or whose people love writing unit tests? Anyone? Anyone? Bueller? No one, right?
That's why we are testing experts here.
Yeah, and so, right. So how do we write some really cool creative code and then say, hey, make sure I didn't miss anything on my unit test? Turns out that's working for us. So, yeah, so it is, right? So it's around the edges, though, but it's not like that. I call it that, like, yeah, I'm not going to try to eliminate my creatives. I just got them good. I don't want to eliminate them now, right? So that's kind of my...
Yeah, go ahead, please.
Hi, Maliana, Seco Consulting. Thank you so much. I had two-part question. The first one is, we're talking about extreme agility. What are those constraints? I think of them as like bumpers and bumper bowling or something like that do need to be placed, and how do you define them? So we've talked about security, budget, resourcing for sure, but are there other constraints that you provide, especially strategic in nature? And then the other question I had, I absolutely loved your point about value, proof of value versus proof of concept, but measurement of that. And then you brought in the ROI, training your business partners and your own teams in how to articulate ROI and or measure value, which is very open. And again, does that go back to strategic, or how do you even get there? Sorry, two questions.
That's fine. I'll take the first one, right, and then I'll let the guys. So really, I think when you talk about the barriers, one is definitely culture and the mindset. So while agility is expected, agility is really table stakes, if you ask me. There's, again, their processes, the way, the work rules, and the way how people work. And can you really change those? And that last mile of adoption is always the hardest. And that last 10, 20% of workers is the hardest. And when you're a global company with multiple geographies, right, you may want agility. There are certain groups who want agility, but it doesn't apply to everybody. So this is where you have to know your culture, you have to know your users and the population, you know your customer, and you gotta start working where you'll be most successful, and then you just gotta go through that tail, which is a long tail of adoption. Go ahead.
What was the second question?
Go ahead.
ROI.
So the first question was talking about, are there any constraints on innovation? And the second one was talking about value management and ROI. So I love this, and I love the trend towards value management as a concept. But how do you train up your teams and upscale them to be able to talk about ROI, measure it, and actually be able to kind of sell that concept?
So anybody who's worked with me now knows that I'm not about to go out and say that everything is rosy for me right now on that scale, okay? But we are really working and focusing from our senior executives on down on building a product-driven organization, on using product as that conduit, as the searchers of ROI and the storytellers within the organization. And then some of us who grew up as business leaders as well as technology leaders thinking about how to tell that story as well, right? It's return on capital is hard to explain from a capital perspective, from a technology perspective. It's even harder to get people to think of competitive advantage from a technology perspective. It's really hard to get people to go from projects to products. Oh my God. I don't know that I have answers on those except my way, which is just bloody persistence. Just keep going. Just keep pushing until they figure it out and drag them across So to Anand's point about the bridge, some of them are going to make it across the bridge. Some of them we're going to have to rope and we're just going to have to drag, right, and show them. So.
Go ahead.
Direct technical, tactical question is literally how do you have them describe value and or ROI in your organization? Is it a budget amount? Is it a calculator? How do you?
I think it always depends, doesn't
Yeah,
it?
I think but no, you're right. So direct answer is yes. If there has to be a business value, now there are tangible factors around this, right? So we do engineering and constructions. When you deploy certain products in the yard, there's not a productivity benefit, but there's a safety benefit.
Yeah.
And there's a well-being benefit, and those matter, right? It's all good business. So, but you have to kind of have those tangible benefits, and you have to kind of be able to walk it. It's not always money, but it is money. End of the day, when you protect your employees and when you look for their well-being and safety, that does translate into profit and productivity.
Yeah, I think, challenge for us, I'll just say this really quickly, right? We're a traditional auction company. People come to our places and they look at our machinery, right? Now we're moving online. If you go to one of our auction yards, the merchandising is unbelievably, phenomenally fantastic, right? You would want to buy every piece of yellow or green gear that's in that yard. It's beautiful. How do you turn that level of things to an online digital experience? It's a journey we're on. And we're trying to understand it because, to your point, we're actually trying to figure out how to measure it, and I don't think we know yet.
I want to build off of that a little,
go ahead.
just because, just trying to give the perspective of a lot of people, at least young people, that I see in my generation, when they go into companies, they really like to go in, we like to go in with purpose. We like to go in and understand what the company is doing, why should we be a part of this mission as opposed to doing the same job for someone else? And really being able to articulate that, to do lunch and learns, to bring them in and really explain to them what the roadmap is and how they're a cog that's fitting into this big, well-oiled machine, really helps get us to work every day and get us to innovate. And around the guardrails piece, I just want to add a little bit. There's an important degree to which we need to understand that every single tool is different. A lot of tools that a lot of people, including people in my generation I've worked with, have always been deterministic. They've always been put input A, input B, and you're going to get input C, no matter how many times you do it. And now we're moving to a more probabilistic world. We had that with basic ML and stuff, but now it's democratized. And when we work in a system that's probabilistic, it's important to understand which use cases work and which use cases really don't work. And I'll quickly, if I could, Vagesh, give a quick example of a project we did with the government, trying to make sure I don't violate any NDAs and have the FBI crashing through that door. But basically, citizen engagement, right? We had a situation where we had a consortium partner that was, their entire job was to manage a US government program. And to manage a program, you need good communication, you need consistent communication, and you need to be able to hook them in and have them participate in a program, right? And the drop rate was just massive. They were getting 10,000 inquiries a week. They couldn't handle that volume. We went in, we looked at their CRM, we used AI to build a tool that would make it easier, like a co-pilot, that would make it just easier for them to comb through their knowledge base, to comb through the previous responses, and just generate a sample response for their agent to look at. So realistically, they had 40 agents working and they couldn't handle all the volume. They now have only 22 people answering emails, and they're able to use that Copilot. Yes, they need to tweak the response, absolutely. And we would not. They asked us to automate it and send it out, and we just said, if you want someone to do that, we're leaving. We can't do that for you because it's still Copilot, but we have that interface where I can go in, I can click generate, it'll look at the case history, it'll look at everything else we've said around this, and it'll generate a response that's 90% there, and I tweak it and I send it out. And so instead of spending 15 minutes copy pasting, I can now do that in just under a minute, and that helps. So
we'll take one more question from the gentleman over there.
Can I add one more thing now? I was going to say this. Us old guys, we started with purpose. I think some of us forgot, right? So I think everybody wants purpose, man. I think you guys have just said out loud what we used to be afraid to say, so congratulations. It's good that you do that, man.
Appreciate that.
Go ahead.
Yeah, thank you very much. Mirko Ross from Ashwin. Is it like the software industry is maybe trapped in the same problem like Boeing? You have high pressure for innovation. You have a management pushing for it. You're going agile because of economic reasons. And this may be all with lack of safety and security, and then you're losing the bolts and the doors when the products are flying. Are we trapped in the same situation? And maybe if yes, what can we do with the management? How can we teach the management that for a sustainable product and a sustainable growth for the company, it's important to listen to the employees?
So can we do about 30-second answer? Because I
Yeah,
want to get to the closing.
I do a whole talk about this all the time. So the irony of all this, right, really quickly, is that every industry in the world has moved to using software to design their hard products, because software is the easiest thing in the world to change, right? All we do is change the state of magnetic and quantum particles for a living. It's the easiest job in the world, right? Everybody else uses software to do their job. Software is stuck doing shit like we used to do in 1950, right? We're still talking about whether we should actually try things in software, the easiest thing to change. So I think to your point, though, is you have to have the safety. The safety is an important word, right? How do you have the boundary around that? And I think that's part of what we're talking about with the partnerships with CISO, with understanding and inculcating all of that. So you have to have that safety culture to operate that way. But I think other hard industries outside of maybe people whose doors fall off have learned that lesson. I think there's stuff to learn from how they use software.
So then we follow up with we have about 2 minutes remaining, so let's do about 45 seconds of what does future look like in terms of agility, in terms of innovation. What would you tell your fellow CIOs?
Try it. I don't think most companies are agile. I think they say they are, but I think we're shockingly behind as a software industry on like actually using software right, or building software right. And I think the second thing I would say is this is a creative, artistic exercise. Give people the respect for their mastery, train the people, invest deeply in your people, create a culture where people want to be the masters of their craft, maybe less about how we can get a co-pilot to do it for you. That's my...
I see the clock, so I'll keep it short. 3 things. 1, alignment. Make sure everyone is aligned in your organization. 2, invest in your talent. Upskilling is so important, and if you can upskill people and give them purpose and passion, they'll come and they'll work harder every single day. And then the last thing is, I know it feels like every day we're like at the helm of a Bronco, and it's just going full speed and we're just hanging on for dear life. But just keep at it and just keep at the helm and just believe that you will reach that path with your organization.
So just hold the thought, and I'll just kind of say, look, I think for CIO, the key differentiator is the ability to innovate at scale and keeping up with the velocity of the technological change. Your cybersecurity, scalability, stability, those are table stakes, those are expected. AI is here to stay. We got to figure out how we work with it and how to make it work for us. And in terms of global workforce, global work is here to stay. You got to figure out how you work, how you continuously learn, be more adaptable, right? And to me, look, the golden age of technology is just beginning. Look at the top 10 companies in the world. It's probably the best time to be a technologist, to do something with technology. Right? So with that, I can take probably one more question, Tim? Right. Go ahead, and we can probably answer on the side to you.
I just, I was listening to all of this and a few other sessions, and maybe I'm just sort of reflecting, right? Because I feel like, is this a company mindset? Is this a leadership mindset? Because I think there are people in this forum, in certain sessions, who are like, yes, the technology is here. I mean, it's not perfect, but I want to try it, and I want to fail fast, and I want to make it better. But there's people that are like skeptical. So there's a spectrum that you see, right? Because I don't know, a few weeks ago, I think this was from MIT, there are 3 kids who built this company called Cognition. You go to their website, it says, hire a software engineer, that's coded, right? So there's that extreme, but not that it's going to be perfect, but I guess my reflection on this one is there's an element of risk. So you're obviously, when you have things like airplanes, you're on the other end of the risk. And there's other areas where I think Rohan was talking about. They built an AI model in an area to reduce whatever they were doing in CRM because that was in high risk. So I guess my reflection is I think there's a big spectrum that we're seeing.
Yeah. So I'll just say 10 seconds, that's really innovation. You gotta try multiple things, see what sticks. And you tweak on the way to see what works.
Yeah, I mean, we're where airplanes were in, 1910 with this? So, yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you all.